Well, good morning again. Don't worry, we're going to review from last week, but today we're going to move on to a new section. This will take us at least 2 weeks, this week and next, and maybe a third. Mythical creatures in the Bible. Unicorns, sirens, satyrs, cockatrices. Yeah. Has anyone ever heard of cockatrice in here before? Yeah, have you? Okay. That's 1 out of 20 or so. Yeah, a cockatrice and more. And there's more. Okay, so again, what we'll do today is we're going to look at unicorns for sure. Maybe we'll have time for cockatrices / basilisks. We'll talk about why they got confused. And then we'll probably do, I don't know if we'll have time to do all of these next week. But this is where we'll really focus on Isaiah 13 and 34. And we're going to see satyrs, onocentaurs, sirens, Lilith. This could be a whole class by itself. And dragons. But that'll probably be next week. I'm not kidding. All this stuff is in the Bible. It really is. Okay, so review time. Quiz. Quiz time. What is the abbreviation in language? Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, MT, what does that stand for? Masoretic text. What language is it? Hebrew. Okay, yes. It's the Masoretic text. It's a Hebrew. Remember, Masoretic text is not a translation. It's roughly when? Oh, bonus question. Roughly when was the Mas?
1080. That's so important to understand.
Yeah.
They didn't finish the Masoretic text until 1000 AD.
About 1000 AD is when the Masoretic text, the major codices that we talked about last week.
If you compare it to, I don't see Dead Sea Scrolls up there.
We did talk about that last week.
Masoretic text and Dead Sea Scrolls, it is identical.
Mostly. It's mostly identical. Mostly identical.
Yeah. Those two things. So it just shows how good the Jews were.
Yeah.
At copying and keeping track of the language. How important it was to them.
Yeah, if you have a comment, remember last week I tried to do the speaker. We're not going to do that. So if you have a comment, I'm just going to repeat it for the video. So Darren's saying that's okay. No, that's fine. Like I said, I'm just going to repeat it for the video. But Darren's saying, just like we talked about last week, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and I think I specifically brought up Leviticus. Leviticus was exactly the same. And the other ones were really, really, really similar too. The only book they didn't find was Nehemiah. Someone mentioned last week, they're like, well, when I looked it up, it said they didn't find Esther. But from the research I've done, this guy, Emmanuel Tov, who's still a professor at Hebrew University, which is where he has access to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Most of them are there. He does not mention that they didn't find Esther. So I will take his word for it. Okay, so these are the major abbreviations and languages, and we're going to see all of these today as we dig into the unicorn. Okay, LXX, what's that? Septuagint. Language? Greek, right? So Hebrew to Greek. Oh, I don't think I talked about this last week, but why is it called the Septuagint? Oh, I did mention it, but does anybody know why it's called that?
Because of the 70 guys?
Because of the legend that the 70 Palestinian Jews who came to translate the Pentateuch. Yeah. So because like the Septa is the 70. Yeah, nice. Bonus point. These two are really the most important. But we also have the Vulgate. So this is not an abbreviation, but what's the language? Latin, right? And so this one goes from Hebrew and Greek to the Latin. Remember I mentioned Jerome. He translated the Gospels. So that would be Greek to Latin. Then he translated the Old Testament from Greek to Latin. Then he went to Palestine and realized that the Hebrew text was a little different than the Septuagint. And so he learned Hebrew just to retranslate the whole entire Hebrew Bible again, which he did. And then the New Testament doesn't seem as if recent scholarship has said that he did not do the rest of the New Testament, but it was translated into Latin. Anyway, okay. Ooh, here's a tricky one. DRA. What's that?
That was the translation you read from last week.
Yeah. Okay. So what language is it? We're speaking it right now.
English?
It's English, right? But it's the important thing here to remember is that it's Latin to English. Okay. The A is the American version of it. This was published in 1899. So there were other English versions from Latin to English way before this one. But this is the Americanized version, a little more updated. But that's the most important thing. So when we want to see how the Vulgate is translating things, we'll be looking at the DRA. Okay. Okay, and then nets.
For a basketball team.
Basketball team. Brooklyn Nets? No, it's an abbreviation. Oh, okay, good. Good thing we're reviewing. This is the New English translation of the Septuagint. So this is the Septuagint, including the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, from Greek to English. And you can find this free online. You just search nets, New English translation of the Septuagint, you find it. Yeah. In fact, it's on Bible Gateway. Yeah. Okay.
Is the Septuagint the entire Old Testament?
Is the Septuagint it's the entire Bible.
Okay.
Yes, it's a good question. The Septuagint is the entire Bible. Which, of course, in the New Testament was in Greek anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we talk about the Septuagint, it's the entire Bible.
So that's really a timeline, is what that is.
What's a timeline? Yes, it is it is more or less time order, yes. Although Masoretic text is much more recent than the Septuagint. Actually, the Septuagint is the oldest. The Masoretic text, like Darren mentioned, is from like 1000 AD. Septuagint is like 2nd to 1st century BCE, like before Jesus. They were translating this. And it continued into the 1st century CE. So you really would actually kind of want to switch those around if you're going to do time. If you're doing a timeline. That's a good point. Any other questions? Any other comments? Good. Okay. Okay, let's review some main concepts, and we'll go over. Sandy brought up a really good point about Moses' horns. So the main concept from last week was translation is interpretation. It's just the nature of interpretation, or translation, excuse me. And
Andrew, if it goes from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to English, that's a lot of translation.
Yes.
And I would think part of it is lost.
Yes. Yeah, there is a lot lost in translation.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes the concepts just don't match up. Like we talked about with Moses' horns. Jerome had translated the word for horns in Exodus 34. He had translated it very literally. It does mean horns. But then it makes it sound like Moses has horns. But then if you translate it, rays of light emanating from his head, that word never means that either. So it's like there was no real good middle ground to reach. And like we talked about last week, I think Jerome did that on purpose. I think he kept horns on purpose because remember the horns, and we're going to talk a whole lot about this with the unicorn, the one-horned beast, right? That horn is a very positive symbol, extremely positive.
Aren't there horns on Darren, somebody else knows this.
On the altar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Horns on the altar, right. There was horns.
Hold for some reason?
Well, they wouldn't hold them, but you might be thinking of the story in, it would be 1 Kings?
I'm not thinking of-
Joab. Oh, no, you're not thinking of a story. Joab, Solomon becomes king, and he pretty much just wants to assassinate Joab. And so Joab runs to the altar, and it says he's holding the horns of the altar. And I forget who it was, but Solomon's like, she dispatches someone to kill Joab, and he's like, well, I can't. He's holding onto the horns of the altar. Solomon's like, so what? Kill him anyway, and he does. But Sandy brought up a great question last week. She said, was Moses ever portrayed with horns at the Transfiguration? Which was a great question because I had not thought about that. Eli, my son, not that Eli, but my son, he brought up this piece of artwork. He found this piece of artwork, which I know it's really hard to see here, but he does have, Moses has horns there. This is such a bizarre piece of artwork. By the way, it's humongous. It's 28 feet tall. It's at the Met.
Oh.
And it's not on display right now, although it's been on display in the past.
And who paints it?
This is by Cristobal de Villalpando. Moses and the brazen serpent and the transfiguration of Jesus. Yeah, right? Isn't that such a strange, well, I mean, it's not that strange though. Like, why do you think the artist would put these two passages together? You can see Moses, you probably can see his horns better here. And by the way, this serpent with the wings, that is exactly how it should be. I mean, this guy, I don't know where he got his information from, but that's how it should be portrayed. Because, and we'll talk about this, but the brazen serpent is a seraph. Which is where we get our word seraphim. But why would they put these two, scenes together? One from the Hebrew Bible, one clearly from the New Testament. Why put those together?
It's like a progression.
Yeah, okay, it's like a progression. Like, how so? How is Jesus connected with the brazen serpent? Eli? And they say that. Jesus says it. He says, just like the bronze serpent was raising up, so I will be too. So, I don't know if the artist, but whoever commissioned him knew that passage really well and knew that there was a connection between raising up the brazen serpent, and you can see the cross is very prominent in that artwork. You can even see like the ropes and stuff on it where they would have to raise him up. Like, the artist is making it clear there's this connection between raising the brazen serpent up and raising Jesus up.
There's a lot in that.
There's a lot in that, yes. We're going to look at some artwork today. There's a lot. Gosh, so much stuff. This was another piece of artwork where I found Moses with horns. There he is. Apparently, this is the Transfiguration. It doesn't look like the Transfiguration. I don't know about you guys, but what do you? Yeah, Eli.
So the devil's commonly portrayed.
Uh-huh.
Is there any relation to that translation?
Yeah. So Eli's asking, like, the devil obviously is portrayed with horns a lot. Unfortunately, the horned Moses became a very anti-Semitic symbol, and a lot of artists were purposely making Moses with horns to connect him that, oh, this is the old law, that's the Hebrew stuff, we don't need to follow that, that's kind of devilish. Unfortunately, we'll see this again. Often Christians were extremely anti-Semitic.
Pretty much a direct connection to this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no connection of it. I should be clear. There's no connection in the Bible that Moses is devilish in any way. But the fact that he's talked about with horns in Exodus 34, it's not a very far leap, right? To go, well, if he's horned, then he's evil. And this is an easy way for us to show that this Jewish stuff is bad.
In that painting, the way that the three men on the bottom.
Right, that would be.
Look at their heads, where they're looking.
Yeah, it's not my favorite painting. But I picked it because Moses has horns, but it's not a very, it's just not a really great painting, to tell you the truth. Yeah, Sandy?
I tried to get on board with you with the horns. And Moses is
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And just the more that we talk about it, you've got those that are saying, well, it's a little demonic. And I think, okay, why did he cover the horns if that's a symbol of power? And his horns appear on his face. Not really his face, but more of his head.
Right.
So sorry, I just can't get on board.
Oh, it's okay. Sandy says she can't get on board with.
One translation.
So you don't like the fact that Moses has horns?
No, I don't think that translation is necessary.
Oh, that interpretation that it's a positive symbol.
I feel like the whole radiant thing works.
The radiant thing, yeah.
And throughout, and
yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you on that. I wouldn't press that Jerome purposely chose horns as a symbol of power. Maybe he really just didn't translate it correctly.
Well, it's the same root word as what I read too.
Yeah.
So that root word kind of goes over.
It's the same root word. Yeah. The only other thing is that that word comes up other times, and he's always translating horned, so he's pretty consistent with it. So at least there's that. We'll see where they're not. Some of these Septuagint and Jerome, they're not consistent about some translations sometimes, and it causes serious confusion. Okay, well, one more. Here's a relief artwork, polychrome gilded wood. You can see it's pretty old, 1568. Transfiguration of Christ on Mount Tabor. You can see Moses got his little protrusions there. So I would say for the most part, Moses was not depicted with horns in the Transfiguration. These were the exception to the rule for sure. There's a really famous painting in the Vatican by Raphael of the Transfiguration, and Moses is not horned. And that painting seems to have influenced a lot of other artists. So, and it makes sense, right? You wouldn't want to take any glory from Jesus in the Transfiguration. So if those horns are a symbol of power, well, you don't want to steal Jesus's thunder, right? Yeah, Madison.
So I might just be missing something from last week, but is the only reason we're considering Moses with horns from Jerome's translation? So do we know how Jerome feels about Jews?
Oh, good question. How does Jerome feel about Jews? That's a good question. I'll have to look that up because he has a ton of writing. I think I mentioned this last week. He's the first one to start adding commentary or like an introduction to each book of the Bible. So he's got tons of writing. How did he feel about the Jews? I'll look that up. I'll write that down. There was another question too. I'm just about Tyndale's translation. I mentioned that Tyndale, it seemed like he just essentially made up some words. Well, as I reread that article, I can't really tell if the author of the article's saying that Tyndale made up words or he just used words in a radically different way. But this author, this guy, Jacobus a Nade, contentious words were rendered in a Protestant way. This is Tyndale. For example, the Latin, however you say that, becomes penitence instead of penance. The Latin cultus, worship. The Greek ecclesia, congregation instead of church, capital C. And the Greek presbyteros, elder instead of priest. So Tyndale's purposely changing words to make it more Protestant friendly, less Catholic. Yeah.
I took a class in college. It was a secular class, but they credited Tyndale with new words.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, and
they said in that class that it's because he, instead of using the Latin, he went back to the Greek and had disagreements with Jerome.
Yes.
And therefore, mostly compounded, but also just made up the more anglicized version of Greek and Hebrew.
Okay, good. So Eli's saying that he essentially did make up some new words. In the very least, he gave some existing words radically different meanings. And later on, like Erasmus, for example, during the Reformation, he goes back to the Hebrew and he does a whole new translation of the Hebrew Bible from the Hebrew to Greek. And he just flat out admits, he's like, well, you know, he's Erasmus. He is the consummate politician networker. So he never wants to say anything derogatory. He doesn't want to say anything bad about Jerome, but he's like, we admit that Jerome may have made some mistakes, but we still affirm what he said, even though he's like, he made a lot of mistakes.
I know Tyndale left notes for his translation.
Yes, until he was executed. Yeah. And then unfortunately, the guy that he was working with, it's not, I can't remember his name right away. He knew a lot of languages, but unfortunately he didn't know Hebrew or Greek. So he just relied on other people's translations to finish the Tyndale translation. Good. All right. Yeah. That's okay.
When the Heiser class, I remember this for Sunday, stuck with me. Weren't the wordmen in Exodus when they were saying, you know, why didn't you kill the babies? You're supposed to kill the Hebrew babies. And they said, well, the minute they hit their birthing seat, and you said that actually, he said that word actually was other places was used as a spinning wheel.
Yeah.
No connection whatsoever. A woman's birthing seat and a spinning wheel.
Yeah, like a potter's wheel. Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess could this be another situation like that somehow?
Yeah.
Something about it looks the same. It's not just like, even though it's spelled different, we have a picture on the wall and a picture you forward.
Yeah, and that potter's wheel was Joanne's referring. It's Exodus like chapter 2. It's really early when it talks about. It says when I think it's Pharaoh. He's talking to the. Yeah, he's talking to Pua and Shipra, and he's like, "Why don't you kill those babies?" And they're like, "Well, when the woman is on the," and your English versions will probably say all kinds of different things, but it's like a birthing stool, but it's actually a potter's wheel. And the reason it's a potter's wheel is because there was a god who, and this makes sense, right? He would create the child from the potter's wheel. Yeah, well, you create something from a potter's wheel, right? You just have this lump of clay, and then you make something beautiful out of it. And then you have you have whatever inside of a woman's womb, and something beautiful as a result.
I'm sorry, it just reminded me of this, that for English, it doesn't make sense, but it happens.
Yeah. We lose some stuff in translation for sure. And that's the fun thing of, at least I think it's fun. I think it's fun to try to dig it out. I thought this quote was funny too, though. He says, not all the innovations in the Tyndale tradition became part of English. For example, then said the serpent unto the woman, tush, you shall not die, became, ye shall not surely die. According to Bragg, tush is a sad loss for English. Like, oh, it's too bad we don't use that word, but oh well. Okay, before we get into the unicorn, I have to make a note here about numbering the Psalms between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint. The Septuagint combines the Masoretic text, Psalms 9 and 10, into a single psalm, and separates Psalms 116 and 147 into two psalms. The point is here that the final count is the same. They both have 150 psalms. But you'll see this as we look into some of the psalms. They'll be like, it'll say Psalm 22, which is the Masoretic text, and our English, okay? But then the Septuagint and the Vulgate follow suit, will be a number off. Would be one number off. Does that make sense? So first number, Masoretic text, and our English versions, unless it's the Nets, which is translating from the Greek to the English, but nobody has that. And then the second number is the Septuagint Latin. Okay, you ready for unicorns in the Bible? Unicorns are in the Bible. Okay, and it's extremely important. Okay, so the first one is Psalm 22. You can turn there if you want. I've got the verses up here. And probably a lot of you guys know what Psalm 22's context is, right? What's the first verse of Psalm 22? Anybody know it offhand?
I can read it. My God, why
My God, my God, why have you forsaken me? So right away we go, oh, this is an important psalm. But in verse 21, so the context, the context of each one of these passages is really important. So it's a supplicant in need of deliverance. Well, you can see why Jesus would go out that from the cross. So the LSB, this is the Legacy Standard Version. So this is just an English version that is translating from the Hebrew to the English. You can see it says, save me from the mouth of the lion and from the horns of the wild oxen, answer me. Nets. Okay, so this is, again, English to Greek. Save me from a lion's mouth and my lowliness from the horns of unicorns. DRA, the Latin. Save me from the lion's mouth and my lowness from the horns of the unicorns. If you have a King James Version Bible, it says unicorns. Now, what's important here is that this is the only verse in the Septuagint and the Latin that portrays a unicorn horns negatively. Do you see the difference there? See, here it says, from the horns of the wild oxen, which is the Hebrew word re'im, answer me. So that's positive, right? Answer me from these horns, God, come on. But here, it makes it sound as if it's saving you from the unicorn. So it's negative. But this is the only time we'll see, as we trace the unicorn in the Bible here, it's the only time that the horn is a negative symbol. And this will be important in just a minute. This is a psalter, so like an ancient manuscript of just the Psalms. Save me from the lion's mouth, for thou hast heard me from the horns of the unicorns. That's the King James Version. This is pretty old, 825. But you can see lion, unicorn. And that unicorn looks ticked. All right, let's zoom in on him a little bit here. Right, and you can see what he's about to do to Jesus. So they saw in this passage, they saw the unicorn as a negative thing. Although we'll see that this is the minority view by far, that a unicorn is negative. Does that make sense? Good? We're good? Okay, so that's Psalm 22. Now, just real quick, the Hebrew word re'im that they're translating unicorn, it does mean a beast with a horn. It literally does mean that, just one, too. I mean, it's very specific. But it probably refers to this now extinct auroch animal that roams. It's basically a big cattle, like twice the size. They're huge. So the Septuagint translates the Hebrew word as monokernos. You can see one horn. And then obviously you can see where we get our word unicorn from. We get it from the Latin. Sometimes Jerome translated it as a rhinoceros. It seems as if for him, a rhinoceros and a unicorn were synonyms. I don't think he saw a difference between those two. Okay, back to unicorns. Psalm 29. So again, context. Here, it's all about God's power. God's going to smash cedars from Lebanon. So in the English, he made them skip like a calf, Lebanon and Syrian like a young wild ox. So that's typically how English is going to translate that re'im word, a wild ox now. But Septuagint, he will pulverize them as the bull calf, the Lebanon, and he that is beloved is like a son of unicorns.
And what is the Lebanon?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Lebanon is a country. Yeah, this one just, I don't know. It's not, doesn't really make sense. I just copied and pasted it from the nets. Okay, so then of course this would be the Latin. And shall reduce them to pieces as a calf of Libanus, and as the beloved son of unicorns. So the problem with this one is that the Hebrew parallelism is really undermined by the Greek and Latin translations, right? Hebrew parallelism is like, he's going to make them skip like a calf and like a young wild ox. But here it gets really blurred. That Hebrew parallelism gets really messed up. But again, the important thing is here, this is God's power. So they're putting this unicorn into this psalm. They're translating this unicorn where we're talking about God's power. Okay, another psalm. And I put the psalm because in this case, the verses are actually different as well from between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint Vulgate. And the reason for that is because the superscription, sometimes it'll say a Psalm of David when he was, running for his life or whatever. The Masoretic text will count that as a verse. So that gets, anyway. Okay, but here the context again, super important for Psalm 92. The unicorn's strength is transferred to a righteous one whose enemies have perished. So you can see Psalm 92:10, but you have raised up my horn like that of a wild ox. 91:11, and my horn will be exalted like a unicorn's, but my horn shall be exalted like that of a unicorn. Now, so this one is important because in the previous ones, we've seen that the unicorn is like the symbol of God's power, but now it's being transferred to a person. Yes.
So can we just insert like power, like the lion, sometimes the lion is negative, sometimes the lion is positive?
Yeah, okay. Like sometimes the lion symbol is positive, sometimes it's negative.
Lion of Judah, the devil is a crown, lion.
Yeah, especially in the Hebrew Bible, the lion symbol is very mixed. But the unicorn symbol becomes almost entirely positive. Okay, now I know this is going back into the Bible, but there's a reason for me doing this. Deuteronomy 33, yeah, even the Pentateuch has unicorns. And again, this is really, the context is really super important because Deuteronomy 33 is Moses' final blessings for each tribe. And verse 17, and that whole passage, it's the blessings for Joseph. So as in Psalm 92, the horn strength is transferred to a person, but now it's not necessarily a specific person, but it seems like it's a specific person within the tribe of Joseph.
So we don't know who that person is.
No, but there was a very common idea all the way into Jesus' time that there was going to be two messiahs. There would be the Messiah ben Joseph and the Messiah ben David. And we'll talk more about this because it's relevant for other passages too. But the Messiah ben Joseph, he fights against an enemy. The enemy and the Messiah ben Joseph are destroyed, but that paves the way for the Messiah ben David. It's a very common thought.
Is it somewhere in the Old Testament?
Like here, like Deuteronomy 33. Because if you read all of Deuteronomy 33, there's your homework. You read like the blessings and you're like, the best ones definitely seem to be for Joseph. And you guys probably already read these. Yeah, and you can see this one's right where the Vulgate translates it as rhinoceros. I love that one. A firstborn of a bull, his beauty. His horns are horns of a unicorn. And so this is in the context of the tribe of Joseph. Okay, Numbers 23. Okay, another really, really important passage. Numbers 23 and 24, which we'll talk about 24 in just a second. This is Balaam's oracles. You guys remember the story? This is an exciting part of Numbers. Most people go, oh, I don't want to read Numbers, but this is a really exciting passage. it's when Balak, the king of Moab, right, Darren? Is it the king of Moab? Or Ammonite? Either one. Moab's, Ammonites, they're related. He's like, hey, Balaam, I want you to curse the Israelites for me. And Balaam's like, well, I can only say what God tells me to say. This is the whole talking donkey story, too. And so he has a series of oracles. There's 4 in total, and they keep ratcheting up. And the king's like, no, but let's go to the top of the mountain. Now you can see them, and maybe you can just curse a part of them. But these passages were seen even way before Jesus, highly messianic. And we can talk about why, but God brings them, the Israelites, out of Egypt. He is for them like the horns of the wild ox. God was the one who brought them out of Egypt like a unicorn's glory. He was to him. God hath brought him out of Egypt, whose strength is like the rhinoceros.
Isn't there a passage in Numbers about Zelophehad and his daughters?
Yeah.
The ones who inherit the land.
Zelophehad.
It's off the subject.
Yeah, Zelophehad's daughters is the 5 women.
Yes.
And they're not gonna. Their dad's name is gonna get wiped out.
He doesn't have sons.
He doesn't have sons, and so it's this. It's like this loophole, I guess. It's like God's like, no, yeah, these daughters were amazing. They go to God or they go to Moses and they're like, Moses, if you don't give us land, our dad's name is going to get wiped out forever. And Moses is like, okay. So he goes to God and God's like, they're right. They can have land.
And one of them is Tirzah.
One of them is Tirzah. That's why one of my daughters' name is Tirzah. Because these women, these ladies were really bold, right? I mean, they can't ask for land, but they do it. And then God's like, they're right. And there were some stipulations they had to follow, but they followed them all. And it's interesting because Numbers ends with that story. It says, oh yeah, and they did get the land. I mean, okay, come on, let's connect. Okay, I know this is off topic, but why would that be so significant? Why would it be significant that lineage can go through a woman? Yeah, Mary. Right? Because Jesus he doesn't have any lineage from his parents, from the male side. He's got lineage from the women's side. Just like these women can inherit from the women's as women, Jesus can inherit from a woman. I mean, right? We all know the ending of a book is really important. So it's like this story, Numbers ends with that story. It's got to be significant. Okay, sorry. Back to unicorns. Yeah. Okay, but still in Numbers 24, right? Now, this is a special case with unicorns, okay? We're still in Balaam's oracles. And his king shall be lifted up higher than Agag, and his kingdom shall be exalted. God brings him out of Egypt. He is for him like the horns of the wild ox. Now, this guy Shaper, I read this article by him. This is his translation, and he's translating from the Greek. His kingdom will be exalted over Gog, and his kingdom will be increased, will spread. God led him out of Egypt. He will be to him like the glory of a unicorn. And then the DRA goes back to Agag, the Vulgate. So Jerome doesn't like how the Septuagint did it with Gog. They changed it to Gog. So he goes back to Agag, this king. Although he still has the rhinoceros there. Now you go, okay, so what's the significance of that? Like, why would the Septuagint translators change Agag to Gog? Well, that goes back to that Messiah ben Joseph and the Messiah ben David. Because replacing Agag for Gog has these messianic overtones. Like I said, at the end times, Messiah ben Joseph battles with Gog and Magog, which paves the way for, and they both get destroyed, but that paves the way for the Messiah ben David. So you can see what the Septuagint translators are doing. They're trying to make this even more messianic. They're trying to make it pretty explicit.
A different animal than all 3 passages. Wild ox.
Yeah. Wild ox, unicorn, rhinoceros. Yeah.
So difficult.
Mhm.
English standard, every single word sticks wild ox.
Wild ox, yeah. Today, almost every English version will translate it wild ox. Yes, Joanne.
Going back to Heiser, he did so much of his book's translations explaining that it's so important to get, like, like plural if it goes, if it has to be. So this whole thing with horns, the first part we learned about unicorns, they talked about their horns.
Mm-hmm.
Unicorns should have only one horn. They depicted it that way.
Yeah.
So with all this translation, the word horns is very kind of the plural explanation, but like he has horns in plural. How do they continually make that connection of a unicorn only having one horn?
Well, again, the Hebrew word is, it really just does mean it has one horn.
Okay. Well, then, but all the translations, they should take the S off the horn. The horn of the unicorn.
Well, it's that it's the unicorns. What does it say? Horns of the unicorn?
Horns. They always use the singular unicorn, but the plural.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes it is unicorns, but all the animals have one horn. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yes, Eli.
I'm not stepping out from I read I can't remember the articles now, but the articles on unicorns in general, and mythology and how they're portrayed,
Mm-hmm.
and stepping outside the Bible. A lot of other cultures or contemporaries have that, and it's always a rhinoceros, an ox, or a goat, because rhinoceroses have one horn.
Yeah,
And
rhinoceroses have one horn.
Goats are common to have genetic deformities, but they'll have one horn or many horns.
Well, we'll talk about the goat that has one horn in the Bible.
But then oxes are often artwork from ancient times and always from the side.
Mm-hmm.
So oxes always have one horn.
Yeah, okay.
So they intentionally would use the language of unicorn to emphasize like it's not just an animal.
Right. And that's, panning out to see this bigger, I think that's what these Septuagint translators are doing. And Jerome, they're trying to introduce a spiritual dimension to these passages. I mean, now don't get me wrong. They thought unicorns were real animals. And we know that now that they're not. But they thought they were real animals. But of course, unicorns existed way before the Bible. And that's why the Septuagint translators used them, because they were these mythical beasts. But they're trying to introduce this idea. There's like this spiritual dimension to these passages that they're trying to make more explicit. Does that make sense? At the same time, the Septuagint's also trying to make these messianic links more explicit. We'll see Numbers 24 again, just a little bit later. Now, this one doesn't have unicorns in it, but this is probably the most messianic verse in the whole Balaam's oracles. A star shall come forth from Jacob, a scepter shall rise from Israel, right? So Hebrew is a scepter, and that's how it's going to be in all English translations for the most part. Here's this guy Shaper again, this scholar. A star will rise from Jacob, and a man, he capitalizes that, will rise out of Israel. The Greek word anthropos was a messianic title. See what they're doing? See what these Septuagint translators are doing? They're trying to make these messianic overtones very clear. They, in their minds, are seeing this network of all these messianic passages and trying to make the reader understand those connections more clearly. I did, this was not a mistake on my part. This is just how it's translated. It's like all capitals. A star shall rise out of Jacob. But then you can see he changes it back to scepter. Jerome's got the Vulgate goes back to scepter. So it's instead of a man. Does that make sense? So these Greek translators, I think they're making very conscious decisions here, especially with these passages that have unicorns in them. Another passage we have to look at, like I said, is Daniel 8, which does not have a unicorn in it, but it's a one-horned goat. And it's a prophecy of these very powerful kingdoms. So like we've been talking about, the horn can be a symbol of God's power, but that power of the horn can also be transferred to a person. It can be transferred to specific people. And here again, we know, right, that this one-horned goat is a specific person representing a very powerful kingdom. And while I was considering, behold, a male goat was coming from the west over the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between its eyes. We haven't looked at a piece of artwork in a while. This one's kind of late, 1658, but you notice how goat looking it is? Often unicorns will be in artwork, they'll look a lot more like goats because of this passage, most likely. I think it looks more like a horse. Well, we'll see a couple others. Yeah, it has split hooves though. Like they're really like bushy and hairy.
A mane.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of goat/horse looking. Yeah, tail's more goat-like. Yeah. So this is one of the earliest depictions of a unicorn in the Bible. This is a miniature. Right, there's the goat. And he's battling the other beast. Notice that he's like flying up in the air. Because remember, the verse says he didn't touch the ground. So they're taking that very literally. Look at that horn though, man. Yeah, that doesn't really look like a unicorn like we think of today, does it? But one of the earliest depictions of a unicorn from the Bible that I could find. Okay, we're almost done, okay? But here's the key one, okay? Psalm 78, here's another special case. Septuagint and Vulgate use unicorn in these passages that the King James does not use it. This is one of the very few that they don't use it. But here's the context. It's the choosing of David and Zion over against Shiloh, which was an Ephraimite city. Who is Ephraim's dad? Joseph. And remember, we saw a passage with the unicorn where Joseph seemed to have the power of the unicorn. But now, again, these Greek translators, man, they knew the Bible. They're such big Bible nerds. They're realizing, like, wait a minute. Okay, the unicorn, I really think this is what they thought. Unicorn power is Joseph's. But in this psalm, it makes it clear that God is not choosing the tribe of Joseph. He's choosing Judah, and more specifically, the line of David. And so in the King James, you can see it says, he built his sanctuary like high, and the palace's word isn't actually there. It's just like high places. But check out what the Septuagint and the Vulgate follow suit. He built his sanctuary like that of unicorns. This high place in the Hebrew, it's a word very similar to the wild ox word, but it's not that word.
He built a sanctuary?
He built his sanctuary as of unicorns.
Does that make any sense?
Well, again, you can, if you read Psalm 78, which we don't have time to read it because it's a very long psalm, one of the longer ones. But it's this whole story about how Exodus, the psalmist is like replaying the Exodus and talks about all the plagues and stuff, and it specifically talks about like, oh no, God didn't choose Ephraim anymore. No, he chose Mount Zion. And that's King David's place. And so his sanctuary is going to be, the power of the unicorn is going to be transferred to King David's line, not Joseph's anymore.
So, kind of like a sanctuary on the mountain. That would make more sense with goats.
Yeah. I think the sanctuary means like the temple. Yeah, for sure. Uh-huh.
So it's not a particularly animal association.
No, I think they're talking symbolically here for sure. Essentially, and we'll sum it up here. The horn symbol is always positive in the Masoretic text, and almost always positive in the Septuagint and Vulgate. We saw the only time it doesn't, the only time it's not positive is in that Psalm 22. The unicorn's horn symbolism can be applied to God and to significant people, right? It can be applied to the one-horned goat, the supplicant from Psalm 29. Is that that? And clearly from the passage that we just read in Psalm 78, at least to the Greek translators. And see, there was a perfectly good Greek word for bull or ox they could have used, but they don't. Not in these passages. They make it a unicorn.
So the unicorn is symbolic of.
The unicorn is linked to it. It's symbolic of power, positive power, and to the Messiah. And we'll see a bunch of artworks. Gosh, we're running out of time.
In the previous slide where it says the sanctuary like a unicorn, or the whatever it said. It's not a unicorn. It's symbolic of the power.
It's a symbol.
Okay.
Yeah, the unicorn becomes the symbol of the Messiah. And what the artists are going to take off with that, man. They will take off with it. We'll look at some artworks here real quick. So the unicorn is inserted by the Septuagint and for the most part, the Vulgate in a network of messianic passages, making more explicit the links.
This might be a basic question.
That's okay. Basic questions are okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but am I understanding Hebrew is very limited vocabulary?
More limited than English, that's for sure.
So these other translators are kind of trying to add a different word to carry over meanings that they see?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that would be a fair statement that Hebrew is limited. I mean, and this is true for any translation, right? If he's just limited to, are you going to translate it word for word or word for thought? And if you're going to do word for thought, like, what's the best word here? Maybe it's not the most literal thing, but we're trying to get across this idea that we see. Okay, unicorns in early Christianity. So this is moving on from the Bible. The patristic fathers saw the messianic links between the unicorn passages. They didn't miss it. And the unicorn quickly became a messianic title. This is one of the earliest unicorns, 1215, a mosaic. Tertullian, you can see their dates, Ambrose, Basil the Great. They see the unicorn as a symbol of Jesus. You can see what Basil says there. He will be called son of unicorns. For as we learn in Job, and we didn't look at the passages in Job, but there are a couple passages in Job where unicorns come up. The unicorn is irresistible in might. What's odd about the patristic fathers is that they interpreted the unicorn. They were not consistent in their interpretation. Let's say that. Some early fathers saw the unicorn as symbolic of Moses. Again, the horns, right? Or they saw it as symbolic of Solomon. But again, even that would be indirectly symbolic of Jesus, right? Because Jesus is a better Moses. He's a better Solomon. Other passages, and this will connect to what you were asking about earlier, Eli, other passages that mention plural unicorns, such as Psalm 22, right, where we saw the Septuagint and Vulgate made the unicorn a negative thing, it looked like that unicorn was going to poke Jesus while he's up on the cross. The unicorn becomes emblematic of Jews and demons. I know. Like I said, unfortunately, that's a theme that we'll see throughout Christianity. A lot of anti-Semitism.
Okay, so Andrew, we don't see, like the NIV today, NASB, we don't see the word unicorn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
These are earlier translations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
earlier
instead of
translations.
Unicorn, I looked it all up, but in the King James,
Yeah.
there's some references to that,
Mm-hmm.
but not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is a direct result of the Enlightenment, the rationalism, empiricism of 17th, 18th, 19th century, where everything has to make sense.
Yeah, and all these animals like NIV, NAS, I think New King James, and then the King James itself. Where do I have that? Anyway, oh, here, King James.
Yeah, that.
Cormorant. Well, that,
Oh, cormorant.
that's a
Yeah,
new
yeah.
one.
Yeah, when you start reading those,
Nocturne, Raven, Screech Owl.
the Isaiah passages that I sent out, Isaiah 13, 30, read them in different versions. Like the animals are going to be totally different. Not totally different, but they'll be different.
This is the King James version. Unicorn, bullocks,
Bullocks,
bulls.
bulls.
Bulls are real.
Those on and what?
Satyr.
Oh, satyr. Yeah, yeah. We'll get there. We're not going to get there today.
But the rest of these. No.
Yeah, there's satyrs in the Bible.
Yeah, but not in the other three that I looked up.
No, not in today's translations, English translations anyway. If you want to jot these down real quick, I didn't put them in the slideshow, but these patristic fathers, again, like they're super Bible nerds. They know. They're like, okay, why can Jesus be the Messiah? Like, why can a unicorn equal Jesus the Messiah? So you can look up John 10:30. I mean, this is stretching it, but it's a really simple verse. I and the Father are one. Luke 1:69, that's an interesting one. You'll see that connecting to David. And then Romans 8:3, they use Romans 8:3 as a scriptural basis for the connecting the unicorn to the Messiah, because Jesus is a sin offering, and goats were often sin offerings. And of course, you have the one-horned goat. Patristic fathers, early fathers. Mm-hmm. What time is it? Oh, we got a couple more slides. So this one's kind of interesting. We'll look at a lot of these Queen Mary Psalter, which again, it's just the Psalms, but this is pretty early, 1310, 1320. You can see the unicorn, man. He's going at it with that lion. And often in texts, the unicorn is described as a really fierce beast. Like, you can't kill it, man. And sometimes in artwork, they make it look like that. Sometimes they're trying to portray that, but for the most part, they don't. The artists don't follow that line in the visuals. They make it a much more domicile like this. That's the unicorn. This is from the Ashmole Bestiary. Bestiaries, I'll get you. Yeah, just a second, Eli. Bestiaries are these medieval texts that were highly anecdotal, allegorical, let's say. They use animals and creatures to moralize things, to have a moral tone to it. So, like, some animals are bad, some animals are good. Yes, Eli?
So, I have friends who are Catholic, so I know stuff on Catholic teaching.
Yeah.
Curiosity, I found that unicorn, I think, earlier relates to Jesus. And that goes back to their Mariology.
Yes.
Jesus, and then you need a virgin, pure woman, and therefore they're always connected.
Yep.
Yep.
That comes from this book is really important. This was like the bestseller for centuries, man. The Physiologus. It was written in Greek, 2nd to 3rd century, but it was translated into Latin in every common language. Really popular. And it popularizes the unicorn. The Venerable Bede, you can see his date pretty early. He states that the unicorn cannot be captured except by true virgins. And there's a reason for that. But here's another guy, Philip de Thon. His dates are like 1120. He says, when a man intends to hunt it, the unicorn, he goes to the forest, and there he places a virgin with her breasts uncovered, And by its scent, the unicorn perceives it. Then it comes to the virgin and falls asleep on her lap. And trust me, I'm taking out some of the more explicit stuff. That's
They would say that they really saw the unicorns in existence.
yeah. Yeah. But it makes okay. So if here's another bestiary where so now they're going to kill it because they've tricked it. It makes sense because the unicorn if the unicorn is a symbol of Messiah, then who's the only person who can capture the Messiah? Well, Mary, because she captured him. He was in her womb. So it has to be a virgin who can capture. I mean, the logic's not bad. Here's a really beautiful altarpiece. I have a detail in just a second, but look at this cute little unicorn. He's in her lap. I mean, that's a beautiful piece of artwork, right?
Where is it?
Yeah, it's wood. Yeah. This one is. Let's see if I have it on the notes. Where is this one? It's in Cilicia. It's in a church.
There's figures on the top.
Yeah, and there's doors to it too. You can't see. I'll send I'll send out the PowerPoint if you want to look at it. Yeah, you can close them, and there's stuff on these. This is a very common thing for artists to do to make these altar pieces. They're called triptychs.
Yeah. Is it bronze or something? Oh, wood.
It's wood. Yeah, painted with gilt. Yeah.
So covered with gold.
Covered with gold, right? And it's called a triptych because 1, 2, 3. Here's oh man, look at that thing. This is a tapestry. It's so busy. The mystic hunt of the unicorn. Look what they use. They use silver and gilt thread, so gold and silver thread for this thing. I mean, it's large, right? 380 centimeters. I mean, that's several feet long. It's now in the Swiss National Museum. It was originally hanging in Germany. Here's a detail, though, of the unicorn. Look at this little guy. Yeah, right. They're early. Yeah, that's a good observation, Madison. That most of them are earlier unicorns were more small, more like goat-like. It's not till later where they start looking more like horses.
Is that the horn that long?
Yeah.
It's longer than his body.
Yeah, I know. She's holding it. Now, this one is this whole tapestry, every single thing, and I mean every single thing in here is symbolic. But that's Adam. And you can see what he's doing to the unicorn. Right? He's stabbing the unicorn. And
it looks like he's holding part of that scroll.
Yes, because he's speaking these words.
Oh.
And it is Isaiah 53:5. He is wounded because of our sins. And then down here, who do you think that is catching the unicorn's blood? It's Eve, yeah. And she's saying right here, and by his blood we are saved. And isn't that beautiful? That's so beautiful. Yeah. And now, don't you love his polka dots? It's a polka dotted unit, and look at his tongue too. Yeah. No, it's a tapestry. Yeah, tapestry. Yeah. No, it's so cute. What a cute little guy. What time is it? Oh, okay. Well, we'll end with this one then. We'll look at more next week. Okay, same idea, right? But now you can see the difference in the unicorn right now. It looks a lot more like a horse. The date's much later.
So do these artworks end with the unicorn? We don't see symbolic unicorns in paintings.
Oh no, we'll look at some. Oh yeah, no, we'll look at some artworks where unicorns are still very popular in art today. Yeah.
And
This is-
symbolic of,
Oh, well, their symbolism is not Messiah anymore. That's for sure. No, nobody thinks that, right? Okay, well, thanks for coming. We'll look at some more unicorn artworks. We'll look at the unicorn tapestry next week, but yeah, thanks for coming.